The hearing opened with a familiar tone, as Representative Jim Jordan tried to set the stage by asking how many inmates in federal prisons are not U.S. citizens, pressing the panel of witnesses for a clear number. Yet none could provide an exact figure on the spot, which allowed Jordan to pounce with his prepared statistic, declaring that 24,000 non-citizens were in federal prison, representing 16% of the population, a number he wielded as proof of the so-called immigration crisis. And he quickly tied this figure to the Obama administration, accusing it of releasing thousands of undocumented immigrants who later committed crimes, citing the infamous Kate Steinle case as an example, attempting to paint the picture that Democrats were weak on crime and that Donald Trump, by contrast, was the one cleaning up the mess. Jordan pushed further, suggesting that illegal immigration was not just a border issue, but also a prison staffing crisis, arguing that if there were fewer undocumented inmates, there would be fewer burdens on correctional officers. But the witnesses, including experts on corrections, labor, and prison safety, pushed back, explaining that the real problem wasn't the number of inmates, but the recruitment and retention of qualified staff, low pay, unsafe working conditions, and a lack of respect for those working on the front lines, reminding the committee that blaming immigrants might make for a good soundbite, but did nothing to solve the systemic issues. Jordan ignored the nuance, leaning on his rehearsed talking points, claiming Trump worked hard to secure the border and reduce crime, while Democrats blocked him at every turn, and when his time expired, he yielded. But that's when Representative Jasmine Crockett took the microphone and shifted the entire tone of the hearing with sharp, fact-driven, rapid-fire questions that cut through the noise, asking one by one, does cutting pay help recruit workers? Does worsening working conditions help retain staff? Does union busting help with morale? And the witnesses each answered no, 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 which gave Crockett the opening to declare bluntly that these were low IQ implementations of Trump-era policies that Republicans were still defending. She pointed out that correctional officers, who face daily dangers and enormous stress, earn an average of just $57,000 per year. Yet during the Trump years, policies slashed recruitment and retention bonuses by as much as 25%, effectively punishing the very people who keep prisons functioning. And while officers were underpaid and understaffed, Republicans in Congress passed reconciliation bills that handed ICE agents up to $44,000 in extra bonuses, creating a massive disparity that demoralized federal prison staff who were left wondering why their sacrifices were valued so much less than others within the same system. Crockett's voice sharpened as she detailed how the Bureau of Prisons was forced to handle detainees on behalf of ICE without receiving adequate funding or resources, stretching already thin budgets and worsening the staffing crisis, which in turn led to prisoner deaths, escapes, and dangerous working conditions that threatened both inmates and officers alike. She didn't stop there. Crockett pivoted to one of the most glaring examples of hypocrisy by pointing to Republicans' claims of being defenders of victims of rape and sexual assault. While under Donald Trump, the administration gutted funding for the Prison Rape Elimination Act Resource Center, the very entity responsible for training auditors, providing technical support, and ensuring compliance with standards meant to protect inmates from sexual violence, a move that directly undermined the fight against prison rape. She turned to the witnesses and asked them to affirm that rape in prisons is vile, unacceptable, and must never be tolerated, and they unanimously agreed, underscoring the absurdity of Republicans' position. Crockett then highlighted that when women and men in federal custody are subjected to sexual assault, their pleas for justice go unheard because resources are stripped away, leaving them vulnerable. And yet Republicans continue to wave the flag of law and order while allowing abuse to fester unchecked. To further expose the hollow nature of the GOP's arguments, Crockett addressed the Republican obsession with attacking transgender inmates, noting that despite the fiery rhetoric from the right about taxpayer dollars being wasted on gender-affirming care, the facts revealed a completely different reality. In the entire Bureau of Prison system, only 2 inmates had ever received gender-affirming surgery, while 4 others had been evaluated and deemed medically ineligible. making the GOP's outrage not only misleading, but also entirely disproportionate. She reminded the committee that weaponizing the suffering of marginalized people for political gain does nothing to fix the real problems plaguing federal prisons, like underfunding, staffing shortages, and unsafe conditions. Her remarks struck a nerve as she connected the dots between policy and outcomes, explaining that when you cut pay, attack unions, and strip away resources, you don't just harm the officers, you also harm inmates, families, and communities, because a broken prison system creates more violence, more recidivism, and less accountability. Crockett emphasized that the Republican strategy was clear: scapegoat immigrants, demonize marginalized groups, and deflect from the fact that Trump's policies made the system weaker, not stronger. She framed it plainly: while Republicans were busy playing politics with fear and division, real lives were at stake inside America's prisons, and those lives included both officers and inmates, citizens and non-citizens, victims of violence who deserved better than to be pawns in a partisan game. As Crockett continued, she layered in the financial hypocrisy, showing how Trump's budget cuts left the Bureau of Prisons struggling, even as money was funneled toward ICE and flashy political stunts at the border, creating a system where headlines mattered more than human lives. She reminded everyone listening that a true tough-on-crime stance would mean protecting officers, preventing rape and abuse, and ensuring safe conditions for rehabilitation, not slashing budgets and rewarding only the agencies that fit a political narrative. By the end of her time, Crockett had completely reframed the conversation, leaving little doubt that the Republican narrative was built on half-truths and fear-mongering, while the reality was that Trump-era policies directly contributed to today's staffing crisis, dangerous prisons, and abandoned survivors of sexual assault. She concluded by drawing a sharp contrast. Republicans claim to be defenders of law and order, yet their policies undermine the very people tasked with upholding it, and they claim to care about victims, yet gutted protections for the most vulnerable behind bars, and they claim to be tough on crime, yet left prisons underfunded and unsafe. Crockett left the committee with the undeniable truth that the GOP's fixation on immigrants and culture war distractions was nothing more than a smokescreen for their failures, and that until America addressed the systemic problems of pay, respect, resources, and accountability, the prison crisis would only deepen. With her closing words, she exposed the hypocrisy not just of Trump's record, but of every Republican still defending it, ensuring that the soundbite going viral wasn't Jordan's fear-mongering statistic, but her dismantling of the entire GOP narrative with facts, clarity, and fire.